Welcome to the Hunt Test Hobo Podcast, your place for truckside chats and insights into the retriever game. Whether you're just getting started or you're a seasoned handler, this podcast is another resource for tips, tricks, and insights from both the amateurs and professional trainers' perspectives. Each week, we'll dive into the nitty-gritty of retriever training, sharing stories of success, overcoming challenges, and forging stronger bonds with our dogs. This is the Hunt Test Hobo Podcast. I'm Chris Rudd, your host, fellow retriever enthusiast, and student of the game. Let's dive in. Welcome to another episode of the Hunt Test Hobo Podcast. I hope everybody is enjoying all the new content and getting out there with their dogs and having a grand old time. This is the first recording of the season that is in the morning. So I have lots of coffee and I'm trying to get ramped up here. Dan knows very well that there's times I show up to the club in the morning and the coffee hasn't kicked in. I've drank it, but it hasn't kicked in yet. And he's like, Chris needs more coffee. Get Chris more coffee.
That's right.
I get the coffee.
Usually I've had about 12 cups by the time you get there.
Exactly.
And I'm not used to morning Chris. And I'm like, wait, I need my old buddy back. Let's get some caffeine in this guy.
Yeah. So the caffeine is this is the second cup. I got up and aired the puppies, let them all out. So it's starting to kick in, but it's a slow ramp. But we'll get there. Well, I haven't said this yet, but Dan Ihrke is on the podcast today. Welcome back, Dan.
Thank you.
Dan has been on a few episodes. I think he was on 2 episodes in the first 5 episodes. So if you really like this episode, go back and listen to those previous episodes. Dan is going to be joining us quite a bit throughout the summer, as Dan is my mentor. You've probably heard me say Dan constantly. Well, this is the Dan that I'm referencing and not my brother-in-law, Dan, who does not know anything about dog training. So that was a pretty lame joke, but it is early and the coffee is not flowing. So Dan, for those who haven't listened to the first few episodes where you were on, give us the brief kind of synopsis of how you came to be a dog trainer and maybe why you love doing it.
Okay, so my dad was a veterinarian, still is a veterinarian, I should say. He's in his 80s, still lives next door to us, by the way, so it's a wonderful thing. But he was a veterinarian growing up. He had usually a retriever in the house, and he was a horseback field trialer with pointers. So we grew up driving all over the country in our camper, pulling a horse trailer, going to all of these horseback field trials where pointers would compete. And so I was kind of born and raised in a field trial environment, just not the type of field trial that I would be doing if I was doing field trials. When I got out of college, the opportunity came to run a hunting preserve. I was a biology major, and part of the job was training dogs. And in the beginning, I just took the knowledge that I'd acquired through observing my dad, really. And then I had a gentleman named Mike Summers come down. Once I realized I was serious, I had a gentleman named Mike Summers, who was a renowned dog trainer from the Wisconsin area, who trained lots of gun dogs and also ran a hunting preserve. He spent a week with me, and I learned a lot from him. And then from there, I kind of made my goal to create my own system using all the techniques that I had learned from other trainers, and then adding my own to try to kind of fill in the gaps. That's the biggest thing, fill in the gaps to make it the easiest for dogs to learn these concepts. And as anybody knows that's a dog trainer professional, one of the things that is so alluring about the whole concept of training retrievers is that it's going to be a never-ending process of learning, and there's always going to be innovative new techniques. So that's always out there. That goal is always out there for anybody that wants to do it. So over the years, I I added a lot of my own little techniques to, again, make it easier for the dogs to learn. And we call it the Gun Dog Success Program. And there's a Gun Dog Success Retriever, Pointer, and Flushing Program. So we train about every different breed of dog, including obedience dogs here. We have 3 full-time trainers and a couple part-time trainers at our organization. So that's what we do.
Very cool. And has Tyler like shown off his sheepdog, or is it what kind of dog? It's a
Australian Shepherd.
It's Australian Shepherd that he's got doing all the retriever work.
Yeah.
He's pretty nerded out about it. And that when you said all breeds, that's the breed that kicked into my mind.
Quick story, funny story. So, I've always taken on the challenge to take new dogs over the years. And Tyler says to me, "Oh boy, I got this guy's got this darn off breed. He wants to retrieve geese." And I asked him what it was. And he told me, I said, "You are going to have so much fun with that dog. They're so smart." He's like, "Oh, I don't want to train this yada." I said, "You just wait." I said, "You give 1 month and you're going to be dancing around going, I can't believe how smart this dog is." Yeah. And there it is.
Yeah. So the last I saw it, it was in one of your guys' wetlands retrieving something. I don't even know what it was. He sent me a text.
Snow goose, I think.
So I don't get texts about cool labs anymore. I just get his project dog. So yeah. I've enjoyed it. But it's always funny to see those different types of types of breeds.
Yeah, and what's great about that is that's an example of taking a dog that has maybe similar instincts, but not the same instincts that you would really like to target if you had a retriever, and kind of rechanneling and teaching the dog to get close to the positive reinforcement he's looking for. In other words, that dog's a herding dog. It's used to chasing and biting ankles of big cows and horses or whatever or sheep or whatever they herd. And we're teaching it to kind of chase after waterfowl, and instead of biting and chasing, they get to chase and pick up now. And so, we use our techniques to augment or change that a little bit, and the dog's still satisfied because it gets to work. It's just a little bit different work than it instinctually is driven to do.
So. Yeah, absolutely. And I was thinking about, I think we might have talked about this in our first podcast, but the benefit you've had of training all different types of breeds with different personalities has really helped you develop, a different. I always tell people he's put the last 5 to 7% on kind of not the pre-existing like the standards that we all know of how to train a retriever, but there's all these little things that, as you say often, like make the rungs of the learning ladder closer.
Right.
And I think like a lot of that comes from, training a lot of these pointers who don't want to retrieve. And,
that's right.
And helping working through that. And, anytime I have a little bit of a situation, I'm calling you and being like, okay, what should I do? And it doesn't matter what it is. like you're like, here's 27 things you should try and do them in this order. And your brain just goes, and it's just like stored up there. It's like, oh, nobody's asked me this in 2 months. Like, and then you just spew it out. It's great.
Yeah. But when you're forced to make you're either sink or swim when you have a business. And there are many times where you have to maintain a certain amount of dogs to survive, and you basically take any dog that comes through the door. And if you know me, if a dog comes through our door and I take it, I'm going to succeed no matter what. And there's been plenty of times where I've been beating my head against the wall saying, why did I take this dog? But because I've driven to be successful, I continue on. I keep trying to be more innovative, and those scenarios have allowed me to learn things that you would never learn if you had this great retriever in your hands and were just going through the standard template or the standard flow chart. You just never would have to go out there and come up with these other shorter rungs, let's just say, in the ladder, so you could train that dog. So yeah, it was very frustrating going through that with many of these dogs, but the end product is I feel like I know more about the uncommon scenarios that we as trainers run into and how to handle those.
Yeah. So there's a bunch of messages that I get throughout the year from people asking how to do things. And I think a few of them have actually come down and worked with you since, I answered their questions. I said, hey, you're only 2 hours or 3 hours from Dan, set up a session with Dan. But it always comes down to, not always, but a lot of times it comes down to the force fetch process. And as a person who does podcasts, I bring a lot of the things that I'm dealing with to the podcast. And so I had a little situation that I thought would be good to chat about. I have worked through the situation, so I handled it in a certain way, but I'd love to hear how you would approach the situation. We might have to back up a little bit and talk about kind of like the standard process before you have to do a deviation or make a change. But I had a puppy, or have a puppy, that I'm in, like, and for those that don't know, there's a lot of people who use a force fetch table, and there's certain times to use that. Most of the time, Dan doesn't use it, and I don't use a force fetch table. We force fetch on the ground so that the transition from picking up the object out of somebody's hand to picking the object off the ground is a much easier transition for the dog. And then until our backs start going out, that's probably the way we'll do it. But I had a dog that did really good through the first, what we do is force hold. Was doing really good at that. I was able to walk around the dog. The dog would come to heel, come to my side. The dog was reaching really hard for the bumper. And as long as that bumper or that forced object was in my hand, the dog could do it. But as soon as my hand would release even just a tiny bit off of that object, the dog would blink or like look at it and would not understand that it was supposed to pick it up. There was such a direct association with that dog to my hand and the object that transition was like. And I had one of those I'm sure you've had plenty of these where you're just like sitting down with the dog, like talking to the dog, like, please just do this right. I'm so tired of doing this. You're so close. You're just not getting this mental, like you're just missing this. And so I want to know like what you would do when you realize, and a lot of times a dog trainer's job is to make that association of or understanding why the dog is doing what it's doing. My dog was failing at that step because it had an association with my hand and combination with the object. And I've never had a dog. I've had dogs that have done it, but it was like almost a week and a half or 2 weeks of 2 times a day trying to get through this. Anyway, I'm curious how you would work through that.
Wow. This is something that happens with every dog, no matter what. They just, some dogs, it's much lesser of a mental jump, let's just say. And so a great deal of this comes in pre-training, first of all, so to prevent this from happening. So let's just back up for a second and talk about the general training process. Ideally, for every learning step, there is a step that involves a combination of positive reinforcement or negative punishment. And to keep all that terminology out of there, that basically means you're giving dogs something they want when they do it right, and you're taking that thing away when they don't do it right. Okay? And so ideally, and you can't do this with every dog, but ideally with a good retriever, when they're puppies, we do something we call fun fetch, which basically involves we play a little game with them, kind of like keep away in the beginning, until a dog recognizes it's fun to chase this little dummy, this little puppy dummy around and try to snatch it out of the handler's hand, right? So if I had the dummy and the puppy on the ground, I'm playing with it like I would a cat, trying to get them attention, getting them to chase the dummy, and then I slow my hand down, unbeknownst to them, and they catch this thing out of my hand, and they think they're a hero for doing it. Once I get them to recognize that little playful protocol, then as the dog's grabbing it, I'll actually say the word fetch. So that's classical conditioning where the dog's learning. I hear that word fetch and I'm grabbing. Like you would take an infant and when they're drinking something, you'd say drink, drink, drink. That's called classical conditioning, as opposed to operant conditioning where you're actually adding a stimuli and changing behavior. This one, the dog's already doing it, and you're saying giving a command or some sort of signal to make the association. Okay, so we start with that, right? Boom, puppy's taken it out of our hand. And now, once the dog will do that, we'll just drop it on the ground and say fetch, and the dog will grab at it. Now, if you don't have a dog that's got the instincts to do this, you can't do that step, okay? So let's assume for your situation that your puppy never went through those steps. So
my puppy wouldn't do the second part. If it wasn't a bigger retrieve, it wouldn't pick it up.
Let's assume for the audience that it's even worse than that, right? So we had a puppy that just would not even do that, right? We'd play with it, and the dog just showed no interest. So we're dead in the water with that concept, right? Okay, but I want the audience to know that is a step that will help. Specifically, the last part of it where we're dropping it on the ground and the dog is picking it up, right? So we started it within our hand, and our other hand is underneath the collar, just like it'll be during force fetch. So the dog is learning to play this game and pull against our one hand in there to get this. Okay, so assuming that would be the right way to start our puppy, right? Then we do forced hold, which starts out with fingers in the mouth. Actually, it starts out with what I'll call a muzzle squeeze. So that we teach our dog to relax when we squeeze the muzzle or the jaw part like this, hand over the top. So if this is the dog's head, pressure on, pressure off. Keep cycling that until the dog learns to relax. Now, that is like one of the bread and butter positive punishment, negative reinforcement combinations that we use to teach your dog to calm down. So our puppy has seen this a million times, so we have that tool as well. Now, whether we're using a table or on the ground, it doesn't matter. We will place our fingers in the dog's mouth like this, and we'll use a attrition in the beginning. We'll try to just hold them in there like this, thumbs underneath the jaw, hold them in there until the dog finally relaxes, right? Then we take the fingers out when the dog stops moving. Sometimes it takes distracting the dog or giving them a real little dominant shake like that, and then the dog will kind of go, whoop, what the heck was that? And they'll stop chewing. That allows us to take the fingers out. So the dog learns when the mouth stops and they're calm, the fingers will come out. Then we transition from there. We start putting an object in the mouth. Now remember, this puppy has already been praised profusely carrying objects around. So it already knows that we're super happy with it when it's carrying objects around. Again, going back to good puppy training, dogs already carrying something on their own volition. We've got a leash on them. We're running around. The dog's carrying it all happy, and we're praising it. So the dog knows that we're happy while they're holding this object, right? So we've already created this dog that wants to pick something up and knows that it's really good when it's holding on to it. So anyway, now we're on the fingers concept. Now we place an object in the dog's mouth right after we've done the fingers. Okay, so the dog's already kind of mentally prepared to, hey, when something's in my mouth, just calm down and don't move. And we get it out. So now we place an object in the mouth. The dog, probably the first time, if we've done it right, is just going to think it's the fingers. It's going to hold it for a few seconds. And then we take it out, say whatever word we want to associate with removal. I use the word out. Good. The dog learns something's placed in the mouth. Just hold on to it until you hear the word out. Eventually, the dog will start dropping it when we start asking it to do a longer hold. Then we will grab the top of the mouth. So if this is the dog's mouth, when the object comes out, we'll squeeze, put the object back in. So now the dog learns when it falls out, they feel pressure on their mouth. The pressure goes away when it's in the mouth, right? So now we get a dog, place the object in. The dog says, okay, I'm going to get praise and acknowledgement. When it's in, when it falls out, I get pain. When it's back in, life is wonderful. A lot of trainers also don't give the dog enough calm acknowledgement and praise while they're holding it and spend a lot of time with that. So then once the dog is used to holding in a static position, meaning they're not moving, some trainers will tie them to something so the dog knows they can't move. Keep it simple for them. I just hold the dog still with my other hand. But then we start moving the dog with no obedience, just moving the dog. And the dog learns to move and hold this object, right? Again, giving the dog plenty of repetition, knowing that we're going to praise them, acknowledge them when they're holding. When it falls out, again, that pressure will come on and off. Then the next step is we do obedience while they're holding this object. They already should know obedience. If your flow chart is correct, you're keeping up with your leash obedience. So now we do a leash obedience while the dog is holding this object. Giving the dog plenty of time to learn, okay, now I have to accept all the standard things that happen while I'm doing obedience with the leash, including a leash correction, while I'm holding this object. Okay, so a lot of repetition of the dog dropping it, pressure on, pressure off, putting it in, simplifying it if it's necessary, getting the point to the dog to the point where the dog will do obedience while carrying this object. Okay. Getting there. Well, I know it's a long process.
I want to pause and emphasize something that you said, is that I feel that most of the time, and I could be wrong, you train a lot more dogs than I do. The part that you just talked about is the real work and the hard part.
That's right. And
getting
people
that part.
Everybody wants to go to the next step when they get a little frustrated, and they go, you know what? I think the rest of this will just be cured if I go to the next step. Totally wrong. Each one of these steps must be done in completion, or you are compromising the rest of your project. It's like using cheap nails or screws when you're building a building. Eventually the wind's going to blow down and she's going to fall down and you're going to go, ow, no, right? And a lot of times going back is not easy. It's not like you can just go, oh, don't worry. If we have a problem, I'll just go back a few steps. Yes, you can go back a few steps, and yes, you could usually redo it, but it's usually twice the pain in the butt.
Yeah, because the dog's already made that improper association, and they think that they're doing right, or they think they're avoiding the pressure correctly, and they're not. And that's when you get into these like, crap, now I got to rewire, and rewiring is way harder than just putting the wires together right the first time.
So I'm going to talk about something right now that's probably going to put me out there as a dog trainer, but frankly, I don't care. I'm a believer in energy. We are made of cells. Cells are made of molecules. Molecules are made of atoms. Atoms are made of subatomic particles. And those are made of energy. That's it. That's it. That's it. Meaning that if the fundamental ingredients, let's just say, of our bodies are made of energy, all the way to the top, we are made of energy. Okay? And we have the ability through emotions, chemical releases, hormones, etc., of changing how we present ourselves. So no matter how you really feel about this, we are conveying energy, or the way that we present ourselves, that dogs pick up differently than humans. And while I'm doing force fetch, I am controlling my energy. And good dog trainers all do this. They make sure that the dog knows that they're pleased with them when they're doing it right. Whether it's verbal praise, how we move, how we feel. I'm a firm believer that dogs are sensing to probably 10 times plus the different idiosyncrasies in our scent, the way we move, our heartbeat, the way we breathe, the way our faces convey our emotions, all of those things. So during these force fetch procedures, we're also conveying, again, through our energy that we give off, that either we're pleased or displeased. And a good trainer will always convey that he's pleased with the dog. And then when we're using punishment, they will kind of turn off like they're a machine. The energy just goes flat. So the dog's not thinking his punishment is coming from them. It's just something that happens, right? I wanted to also throw that in there because I can take one of my students that is doing what I'm telling him to do, but without changing their energy at all, right? They're literally going through the motion, pressure on, pressure off, blah, 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 blah. I can take the dog in 3 seconds, 3 seconds, and I have a completely different outcome. because of the way that I convey energy. And that takes a little time and experience. But I wanted to add that because that is important, okay? Going back to that, so we got a dog now that holds. We just talked to the importance of the forced hold. The dog will basically now, through repetition, do off-lead obedience, right? If we're in the right place in the flow chart, because we've already collar conditioned by the time we've done this, if we're using the right puppy program, right, Chris? Dogs collar conditioned, dogs doing off-lead obedience, dogs carrying the object, dog understands how to heel, sit, fully deliver, and with forced hold, knowing that we're super happy with them when holding, and when it drops out of their mouth, they're going to get pressure. But it's no big deal because pressure will go off when they're back in. And we've got probably a 95% consistency level on once we put this object in the dog's mouth and do obedience that they will hold it until we take it out. And then we start our ear pinch process. Some people will use a toe hitch, like the pointy dog trainers. A lot of guys will do a toe hitch. Bottom line is, look, the dog learns that when there's pressure applied to them, if they just open their mouth, this piece of equipment will get put in and the pressure will go away. They already know that it's good to have this in their mouth. So very easy connection. Pressure goes away, dog grabs it, right? And then we start to slowly add an increase in distance away from the dog's mouth, right? And the dog basically learns, hey, I'm going to feel this ear pinch, or I'm going to feel this toe hitch. It hurts a little bit. If I just grab this thing, it goes away, right? Here's another step they skip over. They don't recognize. With each step, the dog you should have the ability to get 100% success on a freebie, right? So we're using, we call this avoidance training, where the dog avoids pressure by doing something, right? It avoids the ear pinch by grabbing it. Well, remember, it's avoidance training, right? So if you don't have the step where you get that freebie, where you threaten pressure and the dog says, oh, I anticipate this imminent pressure, I'm going to perform a task, and maybe I won't get that pressure. And if you haven't proved to them, right, during this step, the ear pinch, that when you present it, that a great percentage of the time, if they just grab it, they can outsmart you and perform this task and not get the pressure. If you haven't done enough freebies in this step, okay, a lot of people just pinch the ear, the dog grabs it, and they go, oh, I'm good. No, you have to get to the point when you get into that harness position, you've got your hand in their ear, or if you have the toe hitch on them, and you haven't gotten the dog to the point where they're anticipating that pressure and being ready to turn it off, and will, through anticipation, grab that object with no pressure. If you haven't gotten there, you're not ready for the next step. Okay, that's another huge part that trainers miss. Okay, so now theoretically,
well, I got a question before you get too far here.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, are you saying the word fetch yet in the formal part of what you're doing?
Anytime I teach a process to a dog, whether it's sit, heel, any command, I first manipulate the dog through positive reinforcement physically. Like, let's just go to sit. I'll take the treat with a puppy, I'll loom it over the top, I'll get the dog naturally sit. I won't say a word. Why? Because the dog doesn't know what I mean yet. I'll get the dog through physical manipulation with the treat and the leash to sit 10, 15 times, right? Because we all know in the beginning it's a little ugly. The dog's like, what do you want me to do? Maybe I'll try this. Oh, that worked, right? But I'll get the dog to do it many times and start to build that confidence level before I add the signal. Because in the beginning, let's face it, the dog's not trained yet. We're using classical conditioning first. Classical conditioning means the dog's already doing it, and then we're saying the command. So we do it like that first through classical conditioning. We manipulate the dog to sit, and after it's already done it, we say the word sit for a while. What's a while? Probably 2 or 3 days. Then once the dog, when we give him those signals, like having the treat sitting above their head, will naturally or very quickly, logically sit down, and we're getting that behavior. Then we'll start to say the word before we do it, right? And so going to your question, I will, when I'm doing fun fetch with a puppy, I'll play the game. Yeah. Dog grabs it. Play the game. Yeah. Just not saying any commands, just presenting him with a scenario. Get the dog to start grabbing it. Then I'll say fetch. Because I know the dog's going to do it at that point. I know the dog is actively going, hi-ya, when I'm saying that word, right? Then after 2 or 3 days of doing it that way, when the dog's already doing it, saying fetch, then I will say fetch before I present it, right? And now the dog hears the word and has to think about what they're going to do, right? We teach every concept like that. So going back to your exact answer, in the beginning, I just pinch the ear, wait till the dog goes, put the object in, pressure comes off, lots of praise, good dog. Remember, they've already done force fetch or fun fetch, so they're probably going to do it pretty fast. Anyway, after I get the response many times, then I will say fetch, pressure, don't. Okay? But by the time I'm saying that, the dog has already had the pressure and it's already turned it off many times. Now, the dog is going to hear that word, pressure comes on, he already knows what to do. He already knows what to do when he hears that word. All I'm doing is saying a word and timing the introduction of pressure that he already knows how to handle. So now the dog is learning. I hear an audio, and within this much time, pressure that I already know how to turn off is coming. Okay? It's like you've got a spark plug on your butt in the seat that you're sitting on. And somebody goes, here comes the spark, Chris, zap. Now you already instinctually know how to get off of a chair when something's zapping. It's an instinct. Whoa, right? So that happens to you 12 times. Pretty soon you go, okay, I know that zap is coming in within a half second. Guess what? Here comes a spark. I'm going to avoid it. I get off the chair, right? Okay, the dog already knows how to turn the pressure off. You go, here comes the pressure, fetch. And the dog goes, well, that's easy. I'm just going to get off that chair. I'm going to grab that object. Now, here's where the epiphany should come in. The dog says, wait a minute. I hear the word. It's imminent. The pressure's coming. I already know how to turn it off. Well, I'll just turn it off before it turns on. I'll keep the switch off. I won't get the pressure. Right? But people don't really understand how the dog's brain works, so they skip over that pressure. Typically what happens is the dog's just barely turning pressure off by grabbing the object. They haven't really associated the word yet. There's still somewhat of a battle. They're saying fetch. The dog doesn't really know what it means. The dog doesn't associate having his own decision to turn that pressure off and confidently turn that pressure off. And so they associate this word with this aggravated argument, right? Rather than to go, well, this is easy. You already know how to turn the pressure off. I'm going to say the word fetch. You have your own choice. You can grab it and not get any pressure, or you can be obstinate and just sit there and wait for the pressure to start. Well, any smart animal is going to go, hey, I hear that word, boom. So it makes it much easier, less stressful step for the dog. Okay, so we're getting there. I know this is a long answer to your question, but if people don't hear this stuff, they're never going to really understand how to accomplish what you wanted to accomplish. Okay, so now we have the dog. We've done plenty of freebies. Right in front of the dog's face, fetch, give it its own choice. And the dog says, oh, that's easy. No pressure. And praise. And good trainer giving their energy to the dog. Okay? Which should be established, okay? You should have spent lots of time with the dog, showing them what you're like when you're happy, showing them that good things are going to happen when you're happy with them, right? They learn how to read you and feel you, right? So by the time you've gotten here, man, you can use all those little tools, those little tiny little idiosyncrasies that maybe other people aren't doing, to convey happiness and acknowledge your dog. So not only is it turning the pressure off, this is where a lot of other training scenarios are not the same as gun dog success, because we incorporate positive reinforcement with every step, including this avoidance training where there's imminent pressure. Okay? And if you watch my puppy video series, eventually you will be able to see how we teach dogs from an early age that in many scenarios, pressure is imminent. It's not a big deal. And all you have to do is perform a task and you get something for you. In other words, positive reinforcement is thrown into these steps where force is imminent. Okay. So now the dog grabs the object 2 inches, 3 inches in front of the face. Now we just increased sequentially the distance. Okay, now we're getting really close to your answer. Doing the same thing, right? Dog doesn't grab it, pressure's on until it's in their mouth. If the dog grabs it on their own volition, positive reinforcement. Woohoo! And what is that positive? Well, typically what I'll do is kind of run around with the dog because they already know forced hold. They'll already know that we're having a party when this thing's in their mouth, scratching the dog's sides, walking around, giving it verbal acknowledgement. Some dogs could care less about verbal acknowledgement, and I'll run with them. They like running, so they learn they can run with the object in their mouth. So we have a dog that's pretty much like, okay, I hear the word fetch, pretty simple. Just reach out and then grab this thing when it's obviously in front of you. Now, you got to think like the dog. What does he see when that's happening? Does he see just the dummy? No, he's got peripheral vision, just like we do, right? What's connected to the dummy? Our hand. So over time, you may not know it, but your dog might be really kind of convinced that you, who is part of every other thing in their life, are part of that dummy, right? And so when you detach from it, they're so used to going, what do you want me to do? Every time I focus on you, I get positive. What do you want me to do? Well, guess what? Your hand is you to the dog. Just because we try to get them to look at our face all the time, you, a physical being, are you to the dog. So you are connected to the dummy. Okay. Well, how can we detach ourselves from the dummy? Well, one of the first things I do once I start getting the grab is obviously I'm on one side of the dog, okay? So the dog is like this, I'm on one side. So let's just say this is me, this is the dog's head. I will start presenting the object to the other side. So I am disappeared. I will grab
for
it
those
by
of
the
that are
farther-
for those that are listening, Dan is almost, it appears to me, behind the dog, so that the object is in front of the dog. Is that what you're trying to say, Dan?
Yeah, so if I'm faced like this and the dog is this
remember,
side of me,
75% of people are listening and not looking at you.
Right. So anyway, I'm to the side of the dog. And normally when we start the procedure, you're putting the dummy right in front of the dog's face, but you're off to one side of the dog, right? You're not in front of the dog, right? That's even worse, because if you're in front of the dog and he's staring at your whole body and grabbing it, he's really seeing you in the background and he's really associating. So I'm off to the side of the dog, putting the dummy in front of the dog's face. So both of us are facing the same direction, right? But the step that I'm talking about now is to actually reach out further so the dog is looking away from you to grab the object. Now you're disassociating the rest of your body, right, to the best of your ability, and you're getting the dog to pull. It's another step that people don't recognize. When you get to this point, your dog starts to reach. You actually start making them pull against that collar. So this is the dog's head. I've got my hand under the collar, and also in the ear. So once the dog starts reaching for that dummy, I'm teaching him to pull against this hand to get it. So I slowly start making him pull a little harder. Now the dog is feeling that they have to pull against that pressure a little, that collar pressure that's holding them back. Pull against it to get it. And so now I'm adding the hand out away from the dog. So now with putting the hand away from me. So the dog has to literally turn their head away from my body to get to it. Okay, so that's probably the step that if you had done a lot of that in the beginning, you may have already been able to, that might have been a quick, easy step. So part of my force fetch is as soon as they're grabbing close within 6 inches, I start moving my hand away. And then I'll also move my hands in different directions. So I know the dog is following that dummy. By the time I go to that next step, if I put it under his chin, he'll turn down and get it. If I put it above his head a little bit, he'll go up and grab it. If I put it away from me, So he's got to turn his head away from me to get it. He'll do it there as well. So this is allowing the dog to really realize, hey, it's not the handler that I have any focus on. It's the dummy itself. Now, most dogs, if you do that, when you start increasing the distance and eventually getting to go further and further down towards the ground, as long as you're sprinkling that in, again, turn away from me to get the dummy. When you do eventually let that dummy go, the dog will grab it off the ground. If you've done a really good fun fetch, those steps that I talked about doing with puppy, where the puppy's grabbing it off the ground when you say fetch, also the next step is usually easy. Also remember, people tend to go too fast with these first subjects, and they don't do each step, so the dog will do it as a freebie, meaning he will hear the word and do it with no pressure. So I will guarantee somewhere in that process there was something missing with this dog.
I can tell you what it is.
Right.
It could have been what you mentioned about, I always stand to the side of the dog, and I'm making the dog reach for it away from me. Now, I probably don't hold it far enough to the left, but based on what I ended up doing to fix it, I don't think that was the problem. What I ended up doing was actually using the word fetch, surprisingly, because I almost never say it until I get past that point, because I want them to fully understand that this is a pressure on scenario. I'm like, you're doing this without me. And I realized that when my hand went away, the dog, it wasn't that there was avoidance. They were trying to avoid doing what they were supposed to do, but I didn't have a word. I didn't have any way to help reinforce what I wanted them to do.
Yes. Yeah. So just from a technical standpoint, when you're doing avoidance style training, first you get the dog to turn pressure off before you associate it with the word. Okay. And then once the dog is doing it, then you say the word before the pressure happens. Enough times to where the dog eventually will do it as a freebie. They say that pressure is coming. It's imminent. I have my choice. And all I have to do is perform this task, and I don't get the pressure. So you never added that in the previous steps, such that dog really felt like they had a choice and knew exactly how to circumvent that pressure and pick it up.
Yeah, and the reason is because I used to say it, and then I felt like the word didn't mean anything because I was doing it too early. Before and that's a very common mistake I feel that amateurs make with force fetch, is they want to say the word, and then there's a negative connotation to that dog.
Right.
Force means pressure, not force means this is how you avoid the pressure. And so I really have always stalled that as long as possible. And normally I can kind of see when I'm like, okay, now is the time. And for whatever, and I don't know if it's because I just did that dog's sister and had no problem and I got through it really fast. And then this dog was like, nope, it's not. And this dog it's amazing. This dog is completely wired completely different than the other dog from the same litter that I'm training.
What you'll find with the variable behaviors with dogs is some dogs kind of brush pressure off like it's nothing. It's just no big deal. Other dogs have what I consider a different switch in their mind. The analogy would be like an electrical switch. It's not something that they think about. It either just gets switched on or switched off. And some dogs have a switch that when they start receiving pressure, especially if they don't understand it initially, they just turn it off. And there are breeds that are just characteristically terrible with that. Like, for instance, force fetch a Brittany, force fetch an English setter. Okay? You want to see an off switch, dude? You put pressure on the dog, you can just see the dog's eyes go glassy and their brain turns off. While they're receiving that pressure, they have the complete inability to use logic, right? Where other dogs, they seem to be able to think right through it. And the ones that can think right through it, they go through these steps much faster. The ones that don't, you can still train, but it takes a lot more repetition. And what you find with those dogs that have that off switch is the steps have to be much, much closer together. And it takes them, they're not going to react the day that you're doing it. Okay. Like the other dog would. The other dog would say, well, I can think through this, so I'm going to make some logical changes. The dog that has that off switch, you'll get no response the day you're doing it.
Yeah.
None. But the next day, it will meld into the mind, and the dog will react appropriately the next day. So what happens with those dogs is it literally takes not twice, it takes 4 times as long.
Yeah.
Because the day that you get the success, the second day, so day 1, you're putting pressure, don't feel like you're getting a response. Second day, you come back, the dog actually responds appropriately. You have to quit that second day right then. Because if you push any more, boop, off switch, you just ruined your session. So where the first dog is doing it all in one day, the second dog is literally has to take 4 sessions to arrive at the same place. And so that's why I tell people there are certain, and the trainer's mind, don't worry about it. Don't get worried about it. That's the way that this machine is wired. You can't change that by changing the way you think of it. So anyway, one more thing. We were talking about the dog won't reach. Now, you accomplished it through revisiting, putting your signal in there, and letting the dog really learn that he has a decision to make when that signal is coming. And all if he does it, if he makes the right decision, he can circumvent the whole thing. That's what really happened. You gave your dog now the ability to know that pressures are coming. He already knew how to turn it off. And once the dog said, oh, I can just turn that off when I hear that signal, then he was more focused on his own choice and what to do. And he could do it without pressure. See, a freebie doesn't involve pressure. The dog circumvents the pressure and doesn't get it. So it's a lot easier for the dog to think. So I think you had a dog also that had the inability to think well while they're receiving pressure.
Oh yeah, 100%, 100%.
Right. But the other trick I was going to give you is I kept having trouble with those dogs that couldn't put 2 and 2 together. So I took a force dummy and just taped a stick to it. And so now like a little dowel rod where if they grab the dowel rod, I'll just let go of the dummy, and it's so skinny it just falls out of their mouth. So they learn grabbing the dowel rod doesn't work. So, or a little piece of fiberglass, like, the little fiberglass markers you put on the side of your driveway.
Oh yeah.
I little like 3/8 of an inch thick, real skinny, real smooth, hard. Not something a dog's going to be successful grabbing, right? So I put about a 1 foot, maybe 1.5 foot long stick taped to the force dummy, right? So now I can grab this force dummy like this.
Oh, and it's held out as a distance from you.
Right.
Yeah.
So now I'm completely disassociating my physical being, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then I can also, for people with bad backs, I can reach the ground with it much easier when I go to that step of putting it on the ground, right? So that helps.
What also is, and we're running out of time, but this is what you're leading into, and one of the themes that I felt like was important is that when you get in trouble and you don't know how to get out of it, it's almost always about tricking the dog into thinking something different than they're thinking at that time. And you have to figure out a way to trick them into having success. And
it almost sounds like stop, simplify, succeed, doesn't
it? Yeah, it does. But sometimes tricking is easier to remember.
Yeah.
And I remember I was having the same with my first dog. I was trying to force fetch him myself, and I was in the problem. And I texted Jamie, who used to work for Dan, and pretty much, the only thing I got back was, well, you have to figure out a way to trick him into having success. And that still sticks with me every day, is that when I'm training a dog that I'm like, okay, I don't know what I should do to fix this. But I know this is what this dog is thinking, and this is what I need the dog to do. So how can I trick it? And I like that pole idea, because that's what you're doing. You're tricking the dog, and you're disassociating yourself with that into getting it. And I love, like, I had the moment of sitting on the ground, like, I can't figure out why this dog is not doing this. I've trained, 15, 20 dogs through force fetch already. Why is this dog giving me the problem? Like, what am I doing wrong? And like feeling bad for the dog because I can't get through it. And the dog's getting this pressure and not understanding what it's supposed to be doing. And I'm like sitting there in the garage floor, like, what do I need to do to help you understand this? Then to going back and getting it, and the light bulb moment for the dog and the light bulb moment for me when I finally figured out what was missing in my protocols here, the energy and the joy that dog and I had together was great. We were just running around like, woo, we did it, we finally figured it out. Like, oh, you got it.
The emotional let off is crazy when you've had a dog that you've just been so frustrated. Both you and the dog are frustrated, and you're trying so hard, and finally you have the epiphany. It's just like, unless you've experienced it, you don't realize the emotional let off that occurs when that dog finally does it. You're like, thank God. Woo, now we can move on. It gets to the point where if you're not careful, you can aggravate a problem because, especially most dog trainers are type A guys, right? They're like, we're going to go into the scenario. I'm going to lead you. We're going to get success. We're moving on, right? And so when people like us get into a scenario like that and we can't get it, we tend to try harder with the same, unfortunately, with the same things, the same process. And then we get the dog to the point where the dog starts like anticipating because we're doing it too much and we're not changing what we're doing. Then the dog anticipates this battle, and then it just gets like a self-fulfilling prophecy. It just keeps getting worse and worse. So, when that happens,
that's where the danger zone is.
And
you're in the danger zone.
Oh, and we all, especially when you're posed with something different that just outside of the box. It's so easy to fall into that frustration. If you had all that success with these other dogs, you're like, come on, why aren't you, do I have to put more pressure on you? Why aren't you figuring that out? And that's always a slippery slope. That's always a bad place to be as a dog trainer. So when you feel those emotions coming on, what I found as a trainer, when you feel those emotions coming on, stop and get out. Just stop what you're doing and leave. Put the dog away. Go do something else, literally something else for a while until you can feel your energy change back. And then go have yourself a good thinking process of what happened and leave your ego at the door. Leave your ego at the door. As soon as you start saying, well, I know, you don't. It's not working. Seek help. Find somebody to help you. Otherwise, you're going to go back, and that same evil part of your brain, that ego, is going to take back over. You're going to end up right back where you are before. So it's hard to do sometimes, but when you've trained a lot of dogs and you realize that never works, then you get to the next level. You feel those emotions and go, I'm going to go do something else. I'm going to weed the garden. I'm going to go ride my bike. I'm going to go do something with my hands where I know it's A plus B equals C for a while and let those emotions burn off. Then I'm going to take my time and think about it a little bit. I'm going to let the dog's energy go back to neutral, and I'm going to come back and handle it from a different angle. And much easier to get success, much easier to arrive at that wonderful place where the dog has the epiphany doing it that way. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I was planning on us talking about other just odd things that we've done that has worked for dogs. I had a few that I know that you've done while we've been working together, but we might have to save that for another podcast because it's we're coming close to an hour. But I'm afraid to even ask you another question because you're going to just start rolling.
All right. So I promise if you ask me one more question, I'll try to just get straight to the end point.
Okay. I don't believe you. All right. So I'll ask, and you can't give a complete answer because this is a bigger one, but I want to talk about the dog that hovers. I did want to talk about that because I thought we did a good job working through what to do with Rex, but I really do feel like that's not a 10-minute discussion, is it?
I can make it short. Going back to general dog training methodology, we always teach with positive reinforcement first.
So what's a hover? Let's back up. A hover, and I'll define it really quick. A hover is when you're at the line, the birds come out, or it could even be before that, but generally it's when you blow a duck call, something that the dog symbolizes or tells the dog the birds are about to come or the sequence is about to start. Rather than sitting in a proper, upright position, they their butt comes up and it's what we call hover, where they're not standing, but they're not sitting. They're kind of in this hover, and it's a slippery slope to where they start moving, they start creeping, they start doing things that are undesirable.
Right.
But it's very hard to fix because a lot of times it's hard for somebody to notice that it's even happening if you're sitting in a bucket. But anyway, Dan, continue.
Okay, so we have two tools. They're actually four, but I'm gonna keep it simple. There's two things going on in training all the time. There's either we give the dog something they want when they do something the correct way, or we take it away, right? Like you have a stack of cash in one hand. You're either giving that cash or you're taking the cash away, right? The other hand, you've got punishment. You're either giving them something they don't like or you're taking that away, right? Pulling up on the lead or not pulling up on the lead. Burning with the collar or not burning with the collar, right? So we have those two things, right? Give, take away on both sides. First thing you got to do with your puppy, and most people don't realize, they don't watch the butt. Typically, people have their dog sitting and the dog's in a sit posture, a general sit posture, and they're giving the dog a treat or they're giving the dog a retrieve. And what they're not looking for is to make sure that that dog is all the way in the sitting position before they get all these different positives that we give puppies. Sitting for their food, sitting for a treat, sitting to be released out the door, right? And then when they're applying the pressure with the leash, they're not also paying attention to that dog getting the butt all the way down. Certain dogs, physiologically, okay, and mentally combined, when they're stimulated by something, really zone everything out in the rest of the world, and they tend to go into a natural hover position. It's a position of anticipation, right? It's an instinctual thing where the dog says, here comes something, what are we going to do about it, right? It's almost like just getting in the ready position for something to happen. You don't think about it, you just get ready, right? So that's what's happening. The dog, they have a more instinctual, natural hover position when they're stimulated by something exciting. It's an anticipation response. So if we don't do all that work with their puppies to really let them mentally associate, I can't get what I want. I never can get what I want until that last bit of butt hits the ground. Okay, and that just takes paying attention to the dog. Keep repeating until the dog gives you what they want. Keep manipulating with that treat till the butt's all the way down. Keep doing it. But the bottom line is, have a control mechanism. Even if you have an older dog doesn't understand how to do it, you might have to put a pinch collar, pull up, push the dog's butt down over and over and over, and keep taking that retrieve away until finally, through whatever happens, if finally that dog does it right. Pressure on, pressure off with the pinch collar, pushing the dog's butt down, and having the person keep throwing and picking up the dummy and repeating it until finally that dog gives in, and then send them. It'll take a long time for that dog to logically associate or understand the relationship between butt down and retrieve. But if you can finally get that, then you at least have a leg to stand on when you're training, such that when you do take the dummy away or you do sit Nick with the collar, the dog goes, oh, sorry, I got excited and wasn't thinking. I know by all the other training I've gotten that all I have to do is push that butt down another 2 inches to get that retrieve. And that's what you have to do. With any sort of positive, watch the dog. Typically what happens is people aren't paying enough attention when they have a young puppy and they're giving that positive reinforcement when the dog's actually not quite sitting. And all it takes, once you give positive reinforcement, it's the ultimate tool. So that sticks in the dog's mind and becomes a habit. So you have to condition that dog to understanding getting the butt all the way down. And then you have to take away a lot of retrieves when the dog sits up. And I know the exact genetics you're talking about. I'm training a dog out of the same parents, and I will not run this dog because its first reaction to either audio or visual stimuli is to go into hover position. No thought process whatsoever. Something happens that excites that dog, and whoop, right off the bat goes into that. So I have painstakingly taken hundreds of retrieves away from this dog and tried to bring to a conscious level that hover in every different way I can. And I will not run that dog in his finished test until I can run a triple, swinging the gun with all the old HRC excitement stuff going on, and that dog doesn't move a muscle. And it's probably about 20 times harder than it is with all the rest of the dogs in my group because, again, they have an instinctual response to stimuli, which a knee-jerk response. Maybe that makes more sense. A knee-jerk response of going into the hover position when they're excited. So it takes 20 times more conditioning to break through that because it's such a strong instinctual response. We're actually teaching them to do the opposite of what's in their instinctual response to the stimuli. Right?
Yep. And just
don't
to go
give
back,
them the retrieve until their butt's down. That's your answer.
That's the end point of it. But I think that just for people that are listening, you're like, well, why are you combating the natural instinct of the dog? Well, we do that because in a hunting scenario, that dog needs to be, the gentleman's gun dog, right? They need to be able to sit there. They need to be able to watch the birds. They need to be able to perform that action, and that's what the standard is supposed to be in most cases that we're striving towards. And so that's why we maintain that, and the slippery slope to, well, you let the hover start, then the movement starts, and then you have the braking. And it's just a continual problem.
The problem with the hover for the audience, so they really understand why it's such a big deal. You might say, who cares if his butt is 2 inches off the ground? Well, the problem is, the first bird comes up and the butt comes 2 inches off the ground. The next bird comes out. And remember, this is not something the dog's thinking about. It's just an instinctual response. So the next bird comes out and he just takes a tiny little hop. The third bird comes out and the dog moves a little more. And that happens the first time. You might say, who cares if the dog moves 3 inches? The problem is it's subconscious. And the more movement you allow, the more they tend to take the next time, again, without thinking. So that theoretical dog, 4 hunt tests into it or 4 hunt into it, started with moving 1 or 2 inches, but by the 4th or 5th hunt, now they're taking 8 steps out, and eventually, those who've trained dogs know that eventually becomes a break. And that's where it's dangerous for the dog, and it's bad for the hunt.
Yeah, and the thing that I wanted to just reinforce what you're saying is that I've noticed that, like, you have to make doing the right thing the subconscious, like in the sense that, like, you've had so much repetition. This is the posture that you stay in, because you'll see dogs all the time that you'll give. Oh, I give them a correction. They know what to do. They sit on their butt. They do that for 2 more times, and then the next series, they're not doing it anymore, and there's no correction. Then they get collar smart. Then you can't run them at test anymore because they understand the difference between the two, and it's just like. You have to have a standard. You have to, make your dog accept that is a standard and make that the subconscious. But next time we jump on, we should talk about, okay, now you've made yourself a hole, and let's talk about how you get out of it. I think that'd be a good topic of, okay, you have these fundamental problems. Let's talk about working our way out of them.
Yeah. And, if anybody in the audience wants to communicate and have some really cool problems that maybe we could talk about addressing, I think that would be fun too.
Oh, I get plenty of direct messages about problems, and we talked by going through the whole forcefetch process. We probably covered 80% of those comments. People are just always like, "How do I do this? How do I do this part of this? I'm struggling with this," and it's
my favorite question is, how long does it take to forcefetch a dog?
Oh yeah, yeah,
and we all know. It all depends on the dog. Yeah. You can go from probably at the least 1 month, because forcefetch is a lot bigger and longer than most people understand if you're really doing it right, up to 3 months. Maybe 4. I've had pointing dogs that take 4 months to go from the basic start all the way to understanding that if they drop a bird, I can give fetch Nick, pick it up, and come back and deliver it. That's a big jump, by the way, going from picking a forcefetch buck off the ground to picking a bird up when they drop it and delivering it. That's part of forcefetch. Forcefetch isn't just some guy on a forcefetch table and then it's like this 2-week process and you walk away. It's a long process. So,
yep. Cool. Well, we are at 1 hour and 4 minutes, which was good. It was like very thorough. Dan, I appreciate you jumping on, and we'll have to do it again soon.
Very good. Can't wait.